This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. It's important to note when Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris all show their face together in unity, because it really makes you start to think to yourself, if we live in such a divided country where these people are making it so that Democrats and Republicans are struggling to live among each other because they're so angry and irate at one another because of all of the gaslighting that goes on in the news on a day in, day out basis. It's pretty incredible that they could all show up together, shake hands and smile, and then tell you, well, you know, it's a pretty significant day. It's the 11th day of September. So we're all going to put our differences aside. We're going to shake hands. We're going to even pretend like we didn't have a debate last night on national television, and we're all going to be smiles for the camera. Because it's easy for them to do, because of course they're all in cahoots with one another. As long as we remain divided, they can literally show up together, shake hands and smile, and then on national television say, well, people who support this guy are terrorists. People who support that guy are extremists, right? Because that's about us. It's not about them. And really what this comes down to is what a charade politics have become. So much so that we have civilians who defend these people as if they're members of their own family. You guys have seen the comments that I get in regards to Donald Trump. People have to convince themselves it's the lesser of two evils. And again, they can't seem to wrap their heads around the fact that people are voting and they're believing in these politicians is what prevents an actual revolution, which is what prevents us from retaining or even regaining some of our own rights that we once had. And as long as we continue down this road of deception, we're going to lose more and more rights every single day. And what's incredible is because you're going to hear people say, well, on this specific day, you know, Trump and Biden can put their differences aside because it's a significant day in the history of the United States of America. Of course, they won't talk about who's really behind it, because most of these conservatives who support Trump don't even realize the same people that they're supporting over in that battle in the Middle East are the same people who are responsible. You know, the people who are dancing on rooftops. But what's even more incredible than them not being aware at all of that, they still believe that it's guys wearing towels and caves. What's even more unbelievable is that these guys can show up together, shake hands and smile and stand side by side. But remember that massive false flag operation that occurred on that day that they won't let us forget about? In fact, they've even told us that it was more significant than the 11th day of September. That'd be the 6th day of January. How many times they've told us that it's a day that'll live in infamy? And remember, the whole thing kind of was revolving around how Donald Trump wouldn't transfer power. He wouldn't show up and shake Joe Biden's hand and congratulate him. Well, he seems like he's over it now. Doesn't seem to have much of a problem standing side by side with Joe. In fact, let me just show you some of the footage that has been released with all of them standing side by side, pretending, of course, not to laugh, as you could even see Michael Bloomberg holding in chuckles, because Michael Bloomberg continues to get away out in the open as one of these people. We always hear about Soros. We always hear about these people that the conservatives like to talk about. George Soros is probably the most noted one. You talk about them funding this stuff. Michael Bloomberg is responsible, or if not more responsible than George Soros, for funding a lot of these government operations. In fact, I'll get into Bloomberg in a minute. But here they all are together, of course. For the day, they're not enemies anymore. Chuck Schumer only tried to throw Donald Trump in jail, have him impeached, all these things that they've all done. But they can all get along for one day, right? I mean, you could even see the crap-eating grins on all their faces.
He won! He won!
So this is all of them together again, right? Side by side. And I mean, there's stories out there that you could just look at and you could say to yourself, right, this doesn't really add up. I mean, we could start with some of the obvious ones. Now, the mainstream media gave us these stories, but they do tell us that finance records that some people have dug up show us that Donald Trump has, in fact, financially supported Kamala Harris in the past, giving $5,000 at one point in 2011, giving $1,000 in 2013 to re-electing Kamala Harris as the Attorney General of California. But really the one that we need to note here is that Biden is standing side by side with Trump. And these are the two figures. These are the two people. These are the two actors who have incited so much hatred among civilians. Maybe the most hatred that we've ever seen in American history among civilians, just based on who they vote for. It's all come out of these two, because if these two weren't put as the focal points of the parties, the sides wouldn't have been able to get gaslit to the point they're gaslit now. Trump playing the role of the perfect bully. Democrats, it doesn't matter what Trump says, they hate him so much so they've even openly admitted they'd rather put a robot in power than somebody like Donald Trump. They don't care who they have to vote for. That's kind of been the motto of the Democratic Party, right? Even though your vote doesn't count, they say, well, I'll vote for anybody who's on the blue ticket over Donald Trump. I don't care what it is or who it is. It could be a criminal. I don't care, right? That's because Donald Trump is playing the role perfectly. Just like Joe Biden is playing the opposite role perfectly. He stripped people of their freedoms of speech. He plays the biggest buffoon we've ever seen in the history of the United States of America, along with Kamala Harris, right? But the joke is on everybody out there. And look who's standing side by side with Donald. You may not know that Michael Bloomberg and Donald Trump are supposedly not too friendly on the outside, because remember, Michael Bloomberg is a Democrat who's worth $105 billion, by the way, which again is another reason that Trump fits perfectly into this just massive delusion that's going on, is that Democrats literally view Donald Trump as, one of the richest people on earth, and they think that they're a party for the people. But all the billionaires are all the people who vote Democrat. Everybody in Hollywood, everybody who runs big tech, people like Michael Bloomberg who are only worth, $105 billion. I mean, that's not a small chunk of change. I mean, that's probably the most amount of money, if not the most amount of money we've ever heard somebody actually accumulate in our lifetimes, right? They claim he's the 13th richest behind some of the other people who we could all trust, like Bill Gates, etc. But nobody mentions Michael Bloomberg, right? And you might remember Michael Bloomberg and Donald Trump were buddy-buddy for most of their lives. Kind of like Trump was buddy-buddy with that guy, what's his name, Jeffrey, right? That people want to forget that he was buddy-buddy with and said they just happened to be in a lot of pictures together coincidentally, right? Well, Trump and Bloomberg were always buddy-buddy too. But remember, Trump had to flip on Bloomberg because Bloomberg's a big-time Democrat. So Trump had to say, little Michael Bloomberg never had the guts to run for president, right? But they all seem very cordial when they meet together on this 11th day of September. And of course, this is them getting away with this stuff and smirking at you in plain sight. Because all they need to say to the majority of people out there is, well, it's the 11th day of September. We're all Americans. Trump's a former president. We all have to be together. Bloomberg, a former mayor of New York City. So we're all supposed to look at this as these people pretend to throw one another in jail, to try to impeach each other, Trump going after Biden and his son. Of course, they could all just let bygones be bygones while the rest of our country can't seem to, right? While the rest of our country continues to not only be divided, they hate one another so much so, strictly based off of who they vote for. Would you say that these people did their part? Would you say Trump served his purpose? Would you say that Creepy Joe has served his purpose? Of course they have. Because if we look back through history, if we look back even in the last 30 years, no two political figures have created the type of anger, division, and of course, hatred for one another like these two have. So, of course, they're meeting together and they don't want you to think anything of it, and that most people won't. Because we've seen at this point, you could show Donald Trump. I mean, look, you want to just keep things real, as the kids say. The attempt on Donald Trump's life is one of the worst false flag events that the government's ever tried to do. Let's just call it what it really is a psyop that they've ever tried to produce. And that should have been something that all Trump supporters woke up from. And they should have said, okay, this is enough proof for me. This is a poorly done operation. This looks like just like the crap that we see them run at schools. None of this adds up. His ear's miraculously better. But they refuse to believe it. It shows you how deep in the psychosis they are, because they couldn't even pull themselves out of this psychosis when the government gave them a layup. The government literally handed MAGA and Trump supporters, they literally were saying to them, hey, are you this dumb? Can you not see that we got our hands in this? And they actually just didn't take a look at the entire operation with clear eyes. They looked at it from the perspective they continue to look at it from, which is supporting political parties. And if you support a political party, then you are stuck in the simulated reality. If you support Republicans and Democrats and you think that your vote actually counts, then you're in the game. You're in their game. And as the saying goes, you're just a pawn in their game. So these guys get together, they smile, they shake hands, they fund one another, they hang out at country clubs together, but we're supposed to believe they're at odds. No. They just want to make sure that you're at odds with your next door neighbor. They want to make sure that the civilians are at odds, because all it takes is the civilians getting together, banding together, stopping all of this stuff that's going on right now, realizing that we're getting gaslit from every direction, to stop the globalists from really taking power. But obviously, that's not going to occur if people live in the left-right paradigm and they see events like this and they say, Trump's just there because, they're all there because they have to be there, right? Because they have to be there. They're being cordial. Oh, yeah. Well, Trump wasn't cordial when he had to pass power on that day, right? He was supposed to be there, right? I mean, that's that's more of a tradition than going to this, isn't it? The president, whoever loses, the president who's before them shakes hands and says, okay, good luck, right? But Trump doesn't have to be there on that day. But of course, today, they could be side by side while they're all smirking. I mean, the smirks are incredible. Every one of them has a smirk in their face. Biden's laughing ear to ear. Bloomberg can't hold it back because he knows Bloomberg's one of those guys. Like I said, he gets away with this stuff out in the open. Nobody ever talks about Bloomberg. His connections obviously owns Bloomberg. I mean, the stuff Bloomberg's involved in, never hear about Bloomberg. That's because Bloomberg's way too high up to even have his name out there. Soros allows his name to be out there. He doesn't give a crap. But Bloomberg, he continues to get protected, and then Trump has to pretend he's his enemy, even though they stand right next to one another at events like this. So Kamala Harris is 3 feet away. Biden's 2 feet away. Chuck Schumer's 10 feet away. And they're all just standing there, and we're supposed to believe, again, they're doing this for the people. They're being cordial for everyone else. They're setting an example for everybody else, right? Yeah, sure. If you haven't woken up yet, well, it's probably too late for you. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.